I don't read too many periodicals, but one or two I do stick with. And one of them is this. It's the New York Review of Books. And I've picked out a feature here. And I'd like to read you a little bit from it. The book itself is called The Pleasure Shock. It's by a guy called Lone Frank, and it's about a guy called Dr. Robert Heath, based in the States at Tulane University. And he was very active, I think, and I say I think because I'm not an expert, I've only learned from this really, 50s, 60s, and he would do experiments on deep brain stimulation on psychiatric patients to begin with. Sometimes described as an unethical guy. Sometimes ethics were always an issue. Some people didn't like what he did. Some people were very grateful for what he did because he did an awful lot of work on Parkinson's disease, and I think people are benefiting from that early research now. Back then, I think there were issues in what he did and how he did it. What's this got to do with music and all that? Let me read this little bit out. And excuse me about the glasses, I don't really need them to read close in. 12 years ago, it begins, a 59-year-old Dutchman checked into an Amsterdam hospital, to have 2 small electrodes implanted in his brain. The patient was known as Mr. B, letter B. His name wasn't released, I'm afraid. And he had a 40-year history of severe obsessive-compulsive disorder. And drugs and therapy had been tried, but none of those had worked. So that's why he was there, almost like a last resort. He saw this Dr. Heath for this deep brain stimulation experiment, basically. I think he was at the end of his tether at this point. Powered by neurostimulators placed under the skin, the implanted electrodes would deliver regular 5-volt electrical pulses to a region of Mr. B's brain called the nucleus accumbens. Hopefully I've got that right. It was a radical treatment, but it actually worked. After about 6 weeks, Mr. B was better able to resist his compulsions. No longer was he seized by anxiety and panic. So it worked for this guy. Along with the relief, however, came an unusual side effect. Mr. B developed an inexplicable attraction to Johnny Cash. Until the electrodes were implanted, Mr. B had no particular interest in music. In fact, Mr. B used to listen to a little bit of Beatles, a little bit of Rolling Stones, a bit of pop, but he wasn't really that fussed in terms of music. Not that much of a fan until this particular operation. 6 months after the DBS began, the deep brain stimulation began, 6 months after that, Mr. B heard Johnny Cash's song Ring of Fire on the radio. From that point on, Mr. B listened to Johnny Cash and nothing else. In the journal Frontiers in Behavioral Neuroscience, his doctors wrote, quote, "When listening to his favourite songs, he walks back and forth through the room and feels like he finds himself in a movie in which he plays the hero's part," unquote. Mr. B's devotion to the music of Johnny Cash was not compulsive, apparently. His desire to listen didn't feel alien, urgent, or irrational. He simply felt that there was a Johnny Cash song for every experience in life. As long as the neurostimulator was on, Mr. B never got tired of the music. But if the batteries ran down, okay, and this happened, the batteries did run down on occasion, his interest in Johnny Cash vanished. It was as if a flame had been snuffed out. As soon as the battery power was restored, bang, he was madly in love with Johnny Cash again. It's the fragility of the human brain. Let me just put that over there. It's the fragility of the human brain, isn't it? 2 little tiny electrodes, tiny amount of electrical pulses at one particular part in the brain. And bang, this guy goes from not really a music fan to, well, almost a Johnny Cash superfan. And that's where I'm at with this video, the superfan. Now, that's what triggered this. It was a sort of Chinese whisper effect. I sat reading this article, and that got me thinking. And you make these connections, and you think of other people who are dedicated, and maybe go that bit further. This guy basically, it's said in the feature, basically anything he did during his life. There was a Johnny Cash song that was able to fit. It explained life. The Johnny Cash songbook. Now, I'm a Johnny Cash fan, so I can sort of understand this, to be honest with you. I'm not really here to talk about mental health. I don't want to go into that area. It's not what I'm talking about in this video. Like I say, I just used that particular feature as a sort of inspiration to talk about the notion of the superfan and what the superfan is. And I'd like to know. I'd like to know more. And I'd like your help on this. What is a superfan? I broadly know. I mean, fans, as I do, buy records. I've got vinyl, CD and all the rest of it, but I stop there. I'm not really the sort of guy who buys posters, memorabilia. I'm not going to name this guy, but I did know a guy mad keen on the Beatles to an extreme. And he would buy not just the records, but memorabilia and posters and just about everything connected. His house was crammed. You couldn't open the door because behind the door there was stuff, Beatles stuff. You walked through a sort of New York skyscraper landscape of Beatles stuff as you walk through his rooms. So he was a little bit more extreme, shall we say. A lovely guy, sane, level-headed, but mad keen. So I would like to know a little bit about you. Are you a superfan? What do you think constitutes, if I can say the word, a superfan? How far do you have to go to be one? I don't know. Another example, there was a guy on Facebook. He may be still there. I don't see him for some reason now. He was and still is, I would guess, a Gary Numan fan. And this particular guy looked like Gary Numan. He had broad facial features which were very Gary Numan-esque. And this is the good thing. He wasn't just a lookalike Gary Numan. He was specific. He was niche. He was late period Gary Numan. Not the early stuff. Late period Gary Numan. That's what. So how specific can you get? How niche? That's incredible. And he looked great. He really looked the part. It used to attract my eye if ever I saw a little picture of him somewhere. So I noticed him. Is that part of being a superfan? To be noticed, to be recognised? Would your idol be purely an inspiration, a sort of mentor? Do you use the lyrics almost like a poetry? You read life through them. They give you guidance, maybe. Is it purely just a fun thing? Some people put on, there's the Bowie thing, wasn't there? The sort of Aladdin Sane thing in the early 70s, for example, is one sort of thing. So they were very visual. How far do you go if you are a superfan? Is it a purely dress? Have you had plastic surgery to look more like them? Do you go on tour? Do you sort of live on tour with your fan, with your idol as a fan? Do you sort of invest X amount of cash savings so you can disappear for the summer around the world with your idol or band? It doesn't have to be just a person, does it? It could be, an entire band. Again, is that different? Maybe having a singer-songwriter as an idol and a band. Maybe you've done both. I don't know. Is that different? Friends and family, how do they react towards you? Positively, negatively? Do you have issues? Do you have problems? Are you fighting against people so you can be a fan of your loved one, your idol? I'd love to know how that reacts, how people react to you, even going down the streets. How about work? How does that affect you as a super fan? Does your boss sort of humour you? Are you getting criticised because of this? So I'm interested. Like I say, this video is slightly weird in that it's all about you. I want to know from you. I want you to teach me. You tell me. Please comment down below. Keep it clean, please. No swearing. Be polite. This is a family channel, and I just want to keep that atmosphere. Again, be nice to know if there are certain artists, bands, singer-songwriters, old or new, that maybe spawn, if I can use that word, more superfans than others, for example. Maybe there are certain bands out there where the notion of the superfan was more common. And it'd be nice to get a feel for what that means to you. Please get back, comment below, and I will see you soon. Maybe I can do a follow-up on this and do a sort of report, as it were. It'd be great to sort of give you sort of my thoughts on your comeback, on your comments. Until then, I'll see you soon, and I'll see you in the next video.